at the end of the day, law enforcement it's a job to serve. We talk about this, you have that cliche protect and serve, but if you could even take away protect, at the end of the day, it's a service job. Things that I see in this profession, we're able to stand up for those who have need in their moment of need and to protect them, to serve them. And so there's a lot of joy in that too. Just being able to go out there and to meet the needs of the community in very different and unique ways. And so for the community, I would just remind them that law enforcement is the heart, the core. It's a public profession of service.
Hey guys, welcome to the Troy Gramling podcast. I am so glad that you are here today. I do want to remind you, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and share because it's about the algorithm and we want to get the word out because our heart is just to help and to partner with people to reach their potential. I believe with all my heart, the thing I'm most passionate about is that God created you with something significant to accomplish. You have a destiny, a purpose, and we just want to partner with you. Hey, that's one of the reasons I got a new book, or actually it's not a new book, it's my only book. It's my first book. It's called Potential, the Uncontainable Power of God Within You. And if you haven't ordered a copy, I encourage you to do that. I think it would be an encouragement. We take the people of God, how they were enslaved in Egypt, and then God takes them, he uses Moses and then Joshua into the promised land. And I think there's a lot we can learn about our destiny following that same path. A lot of things that we can learn. And that's basically what we do in the book. So pick it up if you would like to. And today I have a very, very special guest. We have our local police chief, Captain Christopher Giovanni. Did I say it right?
That's good enough.
Well, welcome to the program.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's an honor to have you. And I thought we'd just start by you sharing a little bit about your family and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I'm actually, not many of us, I think, born and raised in Broward County.
Wow.
And I am living currently in Coral Springs with my wife, Jackie. We celebrate 15 years of marriage tomorrow.
Oh, congratulations.
21 years together. Thank you. And we have 7 kids, 6 boys, 1 girl. My oldest, Elijah, then Caleb, Josiah, Uriah, Seth, Sarah, and the newborn as of February 9th of this year, Nathan. So we got one for each day of the week, and that keeps me busy. Aside from my home life, I have been working with the Broward Sheriff's Office for a little over 20 years now. I joined the Broward Sheriff's Office in 2004. Before that, I was in the United States Marine Corps. I served 2 combat tours overseas in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom, Operation Enduring Freedom. Kind of how I got into law enforcement here locally. Wanted to serve nationally and came back to serve locally. And besides that, I went and chased my education. I have a master's degree in biblical studies and theology and use every bit of that in my current profession to serve this community.
So now, you have 7 children. You said, what's the oldest?
My oldest is 14, turning 14.
And the youngest is?
He is 3 weeks as of last Friday.
Wow.
I'm sorry, 3 months of last Friday. So,
that is, well, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's, and they're all boy. What'd you say, boys? 6
boys, 1 girl.
Wow. So what's your wife think about that? Was she going for a girl this time?
Yeah, we were actually, we thought we were done with, so Sarah was our youngest, our daughter, number 6. And we felt complete when she came. We felt that, she just kind of rounded it off very well. And God had other surprises for us last year when we found out in June that we were pregnant with another. So, but yes, we're grateful for Nathan too.
Yeah, we have 3 kids and our 2 were boys. And then Steph and I, are praying about it and thinking, well, Steph wanted to go for that girl one more time, and she got her girl. So
that's amazing.
We got the 2 boys and the girl. Now, you mentioned you have a degree in biblical studies and theology. When you got that, were you intending on doing what you're doing, or did you have some other things going on in your mind? I wouldn't think that a lot of your colleagues have those same degrees.
Yeah, it's So my second tour in Iraq, I was already employed with the Broward Sheriff's Office. I stayed in the reserve unit locally for the Marine Corps as a Scout Marine. And in 2006 of June, I volunteered to go back to Iraq for a peacekeeping mission in Fallujah. That really started, my faith journey had started a little bit before then, but truly it was in June of 2006 my faith journey started. When I was in Iraq, without getting into too many of the details, I felt a very strong call from God that when I came back from Iraq, that he wanted me to pursue him. And I wasn't sure what that meant, so I sought a lot of prayer, and I joined the school ministry program, which I felt he put on my heart to join. And after that, I was not sure what I was supposed to do, and I kept praying. And, I ended up helping a friend move to Texas about a year later, a billboard that said Bible College. I remember thinking as I'm driving the U-Haul, I didn't know you could study the Bible in college. And 3 months later, I'm still praying, and I heard Bible College. And I jumped up and didn't know any Bible colleges. I know I live in South Florida, so I typed South Florida Bible College, and I studied there for the next 10 years.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Wow, that's awesome. Yeah. Now, I was thinking about the Marines. We hear a lot, who haven't served in that capacity. Is boot camp as challenging as we all kind of think in our minds and our heads?
Yeah, I guess it's what generation you ask that question, right? Every generation likes to tease the newer generation, but it was certainly challenging. It wasn't easy. It shouldn't be easy. It's not intended to be easy. They really spend the first probably 8 weeks breaking you down, and then the last 4 weeks building you up again.
Now, did the majority of the people who begin finish, or are there people who check out along, or can you check out along the way?
Yeah, we actually had a couple of quits during the process.
Now, where did you go?
So I went to boot camp in Parris Island, South Carolina, and from there I joined right after September 11th. That's why I joined. And so I was deployed as one of the advanced parties to Kuwait in January of 2003. Towards the end of January 2003. And I spent the next 6 months there for the liberation or invasion of Iraq, and came back. I wanted to serve in law enforcement, so I kind of transitioned into the reserve unit that was located in Miami.
Well, I saw in your biography where you got it said the Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal, and then what really got my attention was Distinguished V for Combat Valor. What is combat valor?
So I believe they actually got rid of the V now. They don't even use it, so it's special to have it. But I think anybody that's going to put themselves in a position of combat, it probably deserves some bit of valor. So I certainly don't mean to boast about myself, but there were certain events that took place when we were in Fallujah that my company commander had put me in for repelling an enemy attack on our unit, for just mustering the courage to, in the midst of the attack that we had repulsed, leading that charge. And so it's just going above and beyond the normal call, and showing courage and bravery under fire.
Wow. Well, we sure do appreciate your service. And,
thank you.
Thank you for the sacrifices that you made over there, and the impact, of course, on... now, were you married at the time?
During that time, I was not married. I was with my wife. We just were not married yet.
Okay. So when you come back after your 2 tours there, what kind of what kind of leadership had you learned as a result of especially serving in that kind of context?
I learned that leadership needed to be decisive. One of the things I learned very quickly, my second tour in Iraq was, because I went back as a leader the second time, was that you don't have to make the best decision. You just need to make a decision and stick through with it. Consistency is important. And so just being able to think on your feet, make decisive decisions, lead from the front, If you're going to ask your team to do something, you need to be demonstrating it yourself. And a lot of times it's just that consistency. I learned that complacency, we would say to each other, complacency kills. And so not letting our hearts fall into a place of complacency, to me, is a very important leadership principle, because we can all kind of get to a place where we're in a rut. But trying to keep ourselves from forgetting the basics, the principles, why we do what we do, and the importance of demonstrating that consistently and not falling into complacency was an important leadership principle.
Yeah, because even in our relationship with our husbands and wives, complacency can be a big enemy to that, where we just kind of start to go through the motion. Are there any, other than complacency, any other challenges to especially decisive decision making? I like the way you said that. Any other challenges that you saw, either over there or even as you've led in different circumstances here, that get into people's way where they tend to be non-decisive or passive in their decision making?
Yeah, I mean, so if I had to describe kind of a blending of what I learned in the Marine Corps and what I employ here in my current position, is I think leadership needs to be participative and adaptive. Participative is the idea that, especially the generation that the younger generations, they like to know why they're doing something. I like to involve them in the process. I understand that I have to make decisions. I need to be decisive in those decisions, the final decisions. But before those decisions are made, I can be participative and adaptive in the sense that I learned that it's very important to constantly reevaluate, not get stuck into a place to where it's always been done this way. I've always done this. Sometimes you need to reassess. And so just learning to be flexible, learning to be adaptive. And then the primary philosophy that I follow, which I think is pretty well known. I don't know if people truly understand how and why it's espoused, but servant-based leadership. To me, the higher you go in leadership, the more you're called to serve and not to actually be served.
Yeah, I've in my experience, a lot of times people struggle with decision. Even in my own life, I can see I might not become quite as, okay, here's what we need to do when I get tired. Success sometimes can breed passivity because you got more to lose. You're afraid to lose. When Steph and I were in our 20s and you have nothing, it's, you're not risking much. The more you get a family and you got move forward, then you got to put more on the table to continue to move forward, because the risk doesn't change.
Yeah.
What you have to put forward doesn't change, but what you have, all in is different in your 30s and 40s, different than it is in your 20s. And I think sometimes that can make us indecisive.
It can. And I think that when you're a person of conviction and you live by certain principles, those principles help you be decisive. So sometimes not every decision's, I'm not trying to oversimplify it, every decision's easy, but sometimes it's a matter of principle. Sometimes it's a deep conviction. And so in those things, I think that we should be decisive no matter what the risk is, because they're core to who you are and what you believe.
Now, your strong conviction, not just in your faith, but just, talking with you, it's easy to tell you're a person of strong conviction. Is that something you had going into the military, or is that something they developed in you?
I think it's hard sometimes to pinpoint exactly where it comes from. I mean, I think that my upbringing, the way my parents raised me, being brought up in a evangelical church environment, I think a lot of that influenced my character of who I am. But I do think that the Marine Corps specifically probably would have been something that helped instill that sense of conviction, standing up for what you believe, being one of the few, the proud, and standing for something. So I do think that it's kind of, I'm very eclectic in that sense that it's all mixed together.
Mm-hmm. Well, and whether you're serving in the military or now in the position you hold, there's a lot at stake, not just what decision or direction a company is going to go and whether it's going to be profitable, but actually talking about lives.
Yes.
And now, how do you how do you deal with the weight of your job and not take it home and it cause you difficulties in your home life?
Well, I have a very active prayer life, and I try not to let things fester. So I find that people who carry a heavy burden, and they tend to bring work home, or they tend to carry that heaviness with them, where it starts showing in other areas of their life, whether professional, personal, because they're not dealing with the issues. So everybody might have a different way of dealing with those issues, but you need to deal with them. You can't let them compound. So I personally am a praying man. I spend a lot of time praying, talking through frustrations, personal, professional frustrations, and trying to make sure that I'm compartmentalizing those things correctly and reminding myself of what the truth is. So I don't bring those things home to my wife. Actually, I very rarely talk about work at home.
You know, I did, when I knew we were going to get to chat, I did just a little bit of research, and I saw where it said that law enforcement officers have a 54% increase in suicide risk than compared to the civilian population. Why do you think that those in policing have such a difficult time finding happiness?
Yeah, law enforcement, that's a sad statistic, and we talk a lot about that in our agency, and even the sheriff, very vocal on trying to instill a culture of wellness because of that statistic. I think, Pastor, the sad truth is that law enforcement personnel are constantly seeing the worst in society. I think most people in law enforcement are well-intentioned, but years and years of going and seeing the worst. People call you when they're in need, right?
Right.
Very similar to being a pastor, probably. But people call you when they're in need. They call you when there's crisis. They call you when there's trouble. And you tend to see that part of society. Even before we started this discussion, we were talking about some of the sad news and realities of what's occurring in Broward County. And I think that wears on people. And because they're not processing that, and they're carrying that, like we were talking earlier, they're not compartmentalizing it. I think that weighs on their mental health. Law enforcement needs to have a healthy place to share those hurts, those pains. I think the other thing that makes it hard for us is that law enforcement tends to have this image that we're the ones that are supposed to have the answers. We are the ones that are supposed to carry the burden, so we can't be weak. And so coming to somebody and saying, I need help, coming to somebody and saying, I can't do this on my own, I think that's a hard step for a law enforcement personnel.
Yeah, I can see where that would be challenging. You know, I know in ministry, because I saw, alcoholism and some of those things are high in policing as well, where in ministry, it's one of the highest insurance rates, health insurance. And so they might not find themselves in some of the other vices as much, but because, same thing, holding it in, because in ministry, I think one of the things that challenges pastors especially, but anybody that's in ministry, is how much can you share and still keep your job?
Yes.
Where is the line of, you've messed up too far, or, those kind of things. And so sadly, it's not till somebody does, really screw up and it costs them their family or their ministry that those things kind of come out, because I think people are afraid. It's sad that, as you were sharing, whether it's policing or ministry or any other profession, those of you listening and watching, whatever it is you may do, that it's as easy. There's a lot of hope in just talking with somebody, of course, prayer with God, but then talking with other humans can go a long way and helping you to overcome some of trying to figure out how to deal with what you're going through.
Yeah.
The enemy's real good at making us think we're the only ones.
Yeah, isolating yourself, the Elijah complex of, I'm the only one.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Now, let me ask you this. You are the chief what here in this district, okay? But yet there's chiefs above you. So how do you lead? What are some suggestions for those who are listening up? How do you lead, up those who are leading you? What are some things that maybe help somebody else that's in a position where they have responsibility, but they also have people who are leading them?
Yeah, I think that it's important for us to, first of all, to know our role, to embrace your role. So I know what my job is. I know what the expectations are for me with the city and also for me with the sheriff's office. I have a job to those that are below me, and I have a job to those that are above me, right? And then you also have those horizontal relationships. So I think just having a clear understanding of the expectation of your role is important. That role, you have to be flexible in it. So I can serve my subordinates, those that are below me, but I'm also called to serve those that are above me, right? I'm a reflection of them. I remember when I first came to this city, we're in a unique situation being the contracted law enforcement entity for the city, because we represent the sheriff's office, but at the same time, here we are coming to the city to represent the best of Cooper City. And they asked me the question, how are you going to serve two masters? And I had smiled and I sat back and I had said, I don't look at it as serving two masters. And the question was, well, then what is it? Is that I look at it as I'm an ambassador. I'm an ambassador of the sheriff to Cooper City, representing the best of the sheriff. I'm an ambassador of this city to the sheriff, representing the needs of this city. And so I think that ambassador role has helped me a lot in understanding my position to this community while still staying faithful to those that are above me.
Now, I noticed just when I was reading about you, you're still a young guy, and you've had lots of success, not only as you served our country, but also in policing. What do you? And I know it's not easy to talk about ourselves, okay? But what would you say are some of the characteristics that have allowed you to continue to be promoted and get these opportunities to impact and lead?
It's very hard for me to. I can talk about ideas of being disciplined, being consistent, showing up, but to me, it's all part of who I am. It's a worldview. There's a scripture that resonates with me. I believe it's in Jeremiah chapter 9, verses 23 through 24. It says, "Let not the wise man boast in his wisdom. Let not the mighty boast in his might. Let not the rich man boast in his riches. But let him who boasts boast in this, that he knows and understands me." And then God goes and starts talking about his character, his attributes, who he is. To me, that makes me who I am. My ability to grow professionally, my ability to lead successfully is tied to the principles of my faith and who I am. So I know that there's a place of my responsibility. I have to be faithful. I have to constantly professionally develop myself to be ready for opportunities. But I also understand at the same time it's tied to the reality of him placing me in these positions of opportunity, seeing those opportunities and walking in them.
So I think those that are listening and watching today, sometimes we underestimate, people put, like you were talking, compartmentalize their faith and don't realize that our worldview really can have a big impact, not just on that spiritual aspect of our lives, but all of our life is really a spiritual journey, and impacts our ability to become what God's created us to be at the end of the day.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Pastor, because I do, unfortunately, I've seen this too, where today I'm a Christian, tomorrow I'm a law enforcement officer, next day I'm a father. Like we're sectioning off our life.
Right.
That's not the way our life is supposed to be. We are a whole person. and our whole person is defined truly by our worldview, the guiding principles in our life. And so everything that I am professionally is tied to the core of who I am and walking in that. Now, again, I have to be faithful on that. I have to be disciplined. I have to educate myself. I have to stay physically fit. I have to consistently show forth the character that would place me in positions of opportunity. But all of this daily decisions and daily habits are tied to those worldview or principles. So,
yeah, there's so many biblical principles that, define and guide us, even in the area of, like you were saying, being physically fit to be able to do the, I think about where Scripture talks about everything you do, with your hands, to do it unto the Lord, to do it with all your might. And I think those things are important. A lot of times when we think about personal growth, we think about leadership, I think, forget the amount of opportunities to learn to lead at home. My greatest opportunity to learn how to be a good leader, I think, was actually as a husband and a father. So what are some of the things that you've learned as a father that you've actually been able then to apply in your leadership out in, what you're currently doing?
yeah, home is probably the best teacher. I love being a father. It is probably the most important and hardest job, I think, that's out there. Learning to be patient. We see in our children potential. We see in our children a world that is possible for them to walk in, and trying to see that gifting and having a meaningful way to develop it, to nurture it, to kind of coach and mentor it, but also being patient, because it's not gonna happen as quickly as you want, right? Professionally, it's very similar. I have a team with people with incredible gifting. Some of them don't see it. Some of them need a lot of coaching and mentoring. Some of them just lack consistency. Like, I have some kids that they do great some days, but they're just not consistent, right? How do I patiently teach them to discipline themselves to be consistent at the work environment? So a lot of those principles I do see, and just how a father sees their child, sees the gifting, and has to nurture that gifting patiently, right?
We've got time for just a couple more questions. One, have you taken some of the things that you learned in the military, and would you say you lead your team from what you learned in the military? I noticed, just the way you sat, you make me feel slouchy. All right, and I said, I remember when my friends went off to the military and they came back, and they stood with good posture. Have you brought any of those things either to your leadership position with the department, or even at home with your own kids? Because those are valuable things, but it's like a yes sir, no sir, all those kind of things that have gotten lost somewhere along the way. Do you see yourself bring some of those that you saw as positive when you're in the military?
Yeah. One of the things in the military that I picked up on that I talk a lot about is decentralization of command. It was a big concept, leadership concept, principle in the military. The lowest level decision can be made, it should be made, versus a top down. So I instill that in the team. The reason I think that that's important is because it empowers them. It empowers the deputy, the sergeant to make decisions, not to wait for somebody else to make a decision. Sometimes operationally, vision-wise, like, the leader needs to be the one casting that vision. But the people that are actually doing the work on a day-to-day basis need to feel empowered and supported to actually see it through. And so that whole decentralization of command I picked up from the military, and I really, truly try to instill into my team.
Okay, well, one last question. I know, in the last 2 or 3 years, especially, the perspective of policing and the role that police play in the community, and been a lot of backlash and those kind of things. And I think a lot of times that's because of a bad interaction with an officer or no interaction. And then you're just playing off the media. So, what would you again, and you've done, as we've talked, you've shared kind of your heart, but take just another moment for those who are listening or watching and share, why it is that you do what you do.
At the end of the day, law enforcement it's a job to serve. We talk about this, you have that cliche protect and serve, but if you could even take away protect, at the end of the day, it's a service job. I love to serve the community. I love to be the one I was raised with, my father used to have me when I was a kid. If it was, today, May 14th, you had to read Proverbs 14. And so Proverbs really guided my life. There's a proverb that talks about being a voice for the voiceless, right? Those are things that I see in this profession. We're able to stand up for those who have need in their moment of need and to protect them, to serve them. That takes on a lot of nuances in law enforcement, right? Serving one family is a lot different than serving another family. And so there's a lot of joy in that too. Just being able to go out there and to meet the needs of the community in very different and unique ways. And so for the community, I would just remind them that law enforcement is the heart, at the core. It's a public profession of service in every community.
Well, we appreciate what you do, especially in our community and in our city. And I know those who are listening do as well. And thank you again for serving our country. And it's an honor to get to talk with you and to hear the great things that God's done in and through your life. And we look forward to all that he's going to do in the future, not only through you, but 7 kids, what a legacy, right? The Bible says, blessed are kids, and they are a reward from the Lord. So God bless. Hey, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope you've been encouraged. Like I said, that's always our goal. So be sure, subscribe, share, pass it on, and we will see you on the next one. Don't forget the book. If you haven't got your copy, it's not too late. God bless. Love you guys. We'll see you next week.